Guys, in today's video, we're going to be discussing about this clean code architecture in Golang. So like when you are designing any application, whether it's a pretty simple API or whether you are doing a production grade application, the architecture of your code is very important. How you are structuring your code, how different entities or how different segments of your code or of your applications are interacting with each other. They are of utmost importance. So we're going to be following this architecture, right? This clean architecture suggested by Uncle Bob, and it's a very famous architecture design that is used by a lot of big companies and most of the all the production grade applications that are around you. They are using this, and there are variations of this as well, like domain driven design, hexagonal design architecture. They are somehow related to it, or you can say that they are evolved from it. So today we're going to be discussing about this clean architecture. So first, let me just give you a overview of what this actually is. So what we're going to be building up, we're going to be building API. So let me just quickly. Okay, so what we're going to be building, we're going to be building a pretty simple API with three layers, right? We have the service layer, we will have the repository layer, and then we have the controller layer. Okay. So this controller layer would be our external layer from which the user gonna communicate. Like obviously it's an HTTP API we're gonna be creating. So user will interact with the controllers using HTTP request. Beyond that controller, we will have some routers. So I'm gonna be using Gin for setting up my routers. And then the dependency flow, right? Like how the controller would be requiring. So let me just move this at the top because controller should interact with the service and the service should interact with the repository. And then here we have our entities. Okay, some call it models, but these are something that are in a close connection with the databases, right? So these are our entities, and so this is how the dependency graph would flow. Okay, so the controller will depend on service, right? So controller, let's say I will show you how this what is dependencies and how this dependency injection works basically. The controller will be dependent on service. Service will be relying on repository. Repository will relying on entities. So if you see this architecture, this is the architecture that is suggested by Uncle Bob. So it's a single flow of dependency going from the uh, foremost, or you would say the front of the application to the inner side of our application to the entities layer. Okay, and we're gonna be using interfaces a lot, right? So I'm gonna be introducing you with some ports and adapters way that hexagonal architecture actually suggests about. Okay, so yeah, first let's just understand what is dependency. Okay, so let's just look at a simple example. Let's say I have this repository. Okay, struct, and this repository will have some DB connection, maybe anything. Just call it string as of now. Now, this repository will be used as a dependency in our service. Okay, so let's have let's just call it user repository. That would make more sense, right? So let's just call it user service. Okay, struct here. Now, if you see, we will have the user repo. Okay, type user repository. So now this user repository is a dependency. So let's say if we build some receiver methods for, let's say, u colon user service, right? Let's just say save data. Okay. Now what we can do, we can just use this like u dot user repo, and we can just call all the methods of user repo that are available for us. So let's say, like, let me just copy this and user repository, and let's just say save, or let's just call it add. And I can call it, like, we have some logic here, DB logic of inserting into DB, right? Maybe you're gonna be using some SQL packages in Go or any other libraries like Go RM or something. And then here what we can do, we can just call this add method. Okay, so this is what we call as dependency injection. Okay, so right, so this user service has a dependency on user repository. So if somehow, let's say in my main function, if I'm going to be creating an object for my service, let's just call it SVC, and let me just call it service. So as you see that we are using pointer receiver, so we have to create pointers here. Okay, uh, and here we have to pass the repository dependency during initialization. Now there are different methods of dependency injections, like constructor dependency injection, or setter dependency injection, and there are other different types. That is actually a main thing that revolves around applications, right? If I talk about Java applications, like have if you have worked on Spring or Spring Boot applications, they have something called application context that actually manages the dependency. So you have this auto wire and you have this controller annotations, and what it does, it just wraps it up in something called an application context, and you get a dependency at runtime. With Go, it is possible with Uber FX, and I think so. But in runtime injection is not that much, I would say capable, or is not that much efficient in Go, because Go being a compiled language completely. So we have to adopt some other different techniques for dependency injection. So that is actually a kind of a bottleneck for if you are building a large scale applications, just like you have, like if you have multiple services just like this, right? So let's say then you have to just populate them all in your main function, and that might create issues while you are just extending your code. You will be having a lot of code to be seen in your files in your main. So we adopt different strategies to manage that, but that's an aspect that's seen for a different video. But right now what we're going to be doing, we're going to be just creating a simple application with the clean code architecture, and we're going to be following constructor dependency injection here. So right now this is what we have, what actually is dependencies. Now what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be building up a simple application in Go, and yeah, let's roll. So I'm going to be creating, let's call it make directory clean code in Go. Okay. CD clean code in Go. Now I'm just going to be doing Go mod init, and I'm just passing the name as clean code Go. Okay. Okay. So now we have created this folder, and I will be just putting my all the files in this particular folder. So let me just open this in my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so now we are good, right? So I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can use any ID, whatever you choose, whatever you like. Okay, so let's just start. So first I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be creating my CMD folder, and then another folder I'm going to be creating my internal. Okay. So these are the folders that we will be having. CMD will have my main.go file, which I will use to start my application. And in the internal, we're going to be creating some folders that I'm going to be explaining what are the different folders here. Okay. So firstly, inside the internal folders, I'm going to be creating a folder called APIs. Okay. So this API folder will have all our controllers and all the web logic that we're going to be having. Basically, controllers we're going to be having. Then Okay, then I'm going to be creating another folder called, just call it application. So this is an application layer, right? So you can just think of here we would be putting our services, right? Like concrete services implementation. When I'm going to be creating up files in here, then it would be better to understand. Next folder, I'm going to be creating a domain. So that is a particularly important folder where our entities and our interfaces for our repositories and for our services will lie. This is of utmost importance. That is actually, if you see here, this is the central point. Okay, this is the central point where the dependencies should go, right? So they are just dependencies are going inward. So here, this would be the actually the central point. Okay, so we have the domain folder. Then we have just have the infrastructure folder. Okay, this infrastructure folder would be you can say the external implementation, right? For example, let's say I'm creating I'm trying to use MySQL in my application. So here we will have the MySQL implementation of my repository. Okay, so let's just not waste time and let's just start building our applications here. Okay, so firstly, uh, inside my domain folder, I'm going to be creating a folder called entities. Okay, uh, right, and here I'm going to be creating another folder. Let's just call it repository, and another folder. Let's just call it services. Okay. Now inside the entities folder, I'm going to be creating a user.go file. Okay, so this is my entity. I'm just defining it in the package. Yes, I think I don't have Go tools installed. Let me just install them. Okay, so yeah, I think that's worked, right? Okay, so we have the package entities with me, and here we will be defining another struct that will represent our user. So let's call it type user and struct. That's all. And this is my entity. Next, we will go to our repository here, and I just create user repository dot go. Now here we will have the interface. So basically, what actually we are planning to do, uh, this service will have, this repository will have two implementations. One will be the abstract implementation. One will be the abstract implementation, and another would be the concrete implementation. Now, in case of Go, we have interfaces like in all the other languages, we do have interfaces. But in the concrete implementation, we will have struct. Okay, so now this concrete implementation uh, can be any struct that actually follows all the methods or actually implements all the methods that this abstract interface is actually trying to, or just talks about, defines, I would say, rather a better word. Okay, so let's say we have this, let me just call it package repository. So let's say, right, we have a user repository, and interface. Okay. Now, this user repository interface will have some methods. So generally in almost all the programming languages, we have interfaces are just for, you can say, they are the blueprints for classes. They call, or they just provides it the methods, right? What actually methods we have to do. Okay. So we will let's just define, we have the save method here, and let's just say it returns a string. Okay, that's it, right? So save, now we are just creating a simple save method and it is returning a string. Now in our services as well, we will define user service dot go, and let's define a package services. Okay, and here we will have type user service struct, and service will have, sorry, it should not be struct, basically it's like it should be an interface. and its implementation would be given in the application folder. Let's just give it save user, and it also, let's say, it also returns a string. So right now I'm just creating a boilerplate of our whole structure, and we will just try to run our application with that boilerplate, and then we will start implementing the main logic of our application. So we have this type user service, which has save user, and let's just go to our infrastructure folder, and let's just create infrastructure folder. Let's say you are using MySQL, okay, let's say as your database, right? So we will have a MySQL folder, and in here we will create a MySQL repository dot go. Now this MySQL repository, just change its name to something better, like some MySQL DB. Like type sorry, we have to put the package first. So package MySQL DB, and now here we will give the concrete implementation of our user repository. So let's say in future you might want to switch to another database. So all you need to do is just create another folder here. Let's say Postgres or MongoDB or whatever, and just write up a new implementation. Now that new implementation or that new concrete struct will be implementing this all these methods that are designed or defined by the this interface. That's all. So here here what we will do, we will just start writing a struct, just call it my SQL repository struct, okay, and let's say right here our DB connections will go. Okay, so any, like maybe you are using any SQLX or any other database connection here, you can use it here. Now we will just define some methods, right? Obviously, this this struct will only be allowed to implement the only be said to implement this interface when it has an implementation for this method as well. Because in Go we have something called as duck typing, right? So in Go, unlike other languages, you don't have to put implements keyword or anything like that for make that implementation happen. What you have to do is just implement all those methods, and good is good to go. Go is good to go, right? So we have let's find a function. You can have a pointer receiver, or you can have a value receiver, whatever you want, but let's just go with the pointer receiver as of now. And here we will have the save method with us. Okay, now that's it. And here, as of now, it is returning something. Yeah, so what we will do, we will just return repository MySQL got called, and make sure to print just put return value here as well, type of return value. Okay, so our repository is ready, and now we are good to go. Now let's just come to our services. So our repository part is done. Okay, and we will be doing DB connections and all maybe in the next video. Right. But let's just go to our user service. Now this user service is an interface. Okay, we have to give it a concrete implementation as well. Right. So what we're gonna be doing, we will go to our application. We'll create a new folder. You can just call it services. Inside the services, you will have user service. You can some call it IMPL, right? Implementation.go or whatever you want, right? So that's totally depends on you. I'm going to be calling it user service IMPL, and the package is services. So yeah, package services, not type. Package services. Cool. Now here we will create our implementation, right? Our user service, actual user service implementation. So I will make it as a lowercase because just don't want to expose it to the external entity, so no one can access it directly. So struct. Now this user service will have dependency of our repository. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be calling it user repo, and it would be user repository. This is user repository. Hold on. Let's just remove this from here. Okay, I think it is not importing automatically, so I have to import it. So my go mod is clean code go, internal domain and slash repository, and we should have repository dot user repository. Not import package user repository. Let me just see here. I think there is some problem with this path that I have mentioned. So we have package repository, so we have domain, entities, repository, and services. Let me just fix this. Okay, so it's been fixed, right? So now we have this. Now this user service has a dependency which is on interface. Now, as per polymorphism, right? Go has like how Go implements polymorphism, that we have an interface and it can have multiple forms. Whatever the struct that is going to be implementing it, it will just be that concrete type. That's it. So now our service is ready and we can just define some methods here. So u dot user service, and let's just call it so we just go to our service interface and it is implementing save user, right? So we have to implement save user. It has defined save user method. We have to implement save user method and it should return string. And here we just return save user from service, from user service, save user called. Okay. And I think that's all. But before that, we have to just create a constructor for it. So Go does not have any new keyword as such. For it has a new keyword, but not for just creating specifically this constructor, right? Way we had. So what we're gonna be doing, we're gonna be creating our own function, new, and we just call it new user service. Okay, and now this new user service will return the type as repository.user repository. This is a very important part in here. So if you see from our constructor function, we are just the return type is repository.user repository. Now from here we can return any type that is implementing this repository.user repository. So our user service actually implementing it because it has given the definition of save user. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing is to return ampersand, and sorry, not like this, user service, and I think the spelling is wrong, and user service. Okay, just hold on. So here we have to okay, so here we should not be returning the user repository. It should be repository dot service dot actually user service. My bad. User service dot I have to bring the services package. So we have this user services dot go, and it has this user service. So it should representing services dot user service and listen. So now we are good to go. So at that time I was returning user repository. Obviously that's not possible. You have to return the user service. Now this user service is an interface here, okay, and this our save data. Now in here we can just implement HTTP interfaces, and we are good to go to serve them as make them as an HTTP handler as well. Right now I'm just printing out fmt dot, not actually, we should call h dot user service dot save user. So let's just call these and let's say what actually is printed. So fmt.println, and let's see, let's just test our dependency injection flow. Now in my main.go, I will create a package main, and we will have the main method. Okay. Now, firstly, what we're going to be doing, so we're going to be starting from the innermost, right? So firstly, we will have to create the repository dependency. Yes, so we will go to the user repository, and not here in MySQL repository, obviously. So now here we will create a function new MySQL repository, and from here again we will return repository dot user repository. Okay. It should be new MySQL repository, and we will just return MySQL repository. That's it. And here, if we would have been any DB connections and all, we could have passed here. Okay, so that is a agenda for our next video. We will gonna be extended further to make it as a proper working HTTP application. So we are good to go, and let's just go to our main method and just create repository. So I'm just gonna be calling it repo, and I'm gonna be using, so here we have MySQL DB, right? So MySQL DB dot new MySQL repository. Okay, so if you want, what we can do, we can just make it a smaller case such that it is not available from outside. And so now if I go here, MySQL DB, so we have only new MySQL repository. This. Now it will return the repository struct for us, repository struct object that we have to pass into our service dependency. So this is particular process that you're saying is dependency injection. We are creating dependencies and we are passing it into the next state or the next level because it requires it. So we just create a service, okay, and services, not services, this one. We'll go to this application services, and okay, so I have to change this to application. That would be better name. Yeah. So now here we will call application dot new user service, right? So we got this. Now in here we will pass this as a argument, okay, because if you see in the user service we are passing this user repository interface, which is actually the interface which is satisfied by this MySQL DB or new MySQL repository. So yeah, we are passing it. Now next is we're going to be creating controller dependency. So let's just call it controller, and controllers, let's see what is the package name we have in API controllers. Okay, so we have the controllers, right? So controllers dot user controller. uh okay, so I guess we have to create the object for our user controller as well. using new construct as a function, new user controller, and we can just directly return the user controller from here. Okay, return ampersand user controller, and here we will have the service, right? So services dot user service, which is an interface, and we have just call it svc, and we can just process it as a dependency with a comma. So now we are good to go. Now while creating controllers dot new user controller, we can pass service as a dependency. Now this controller object we have, now we can just invoke the method. So let's just see. So we just call controllers dot save data, and let's run our application. Let's see how it goes. So we just go to cd/cmd and go run main.go. From user service, save user called. Okay, so let's just look at the flow, how the flow is going. So when we call the save data, it invoked this method. This is save data method, which internally invoked the save user method. Okay, which save user is here. From user service, save user call. If we want, we can invoke the repository method as well from here. So u dot user repo dot save, we can call. Now it will invoke the repository method as well. Okay, so that's how it works. So let's just run it again. From user service, save user called. Okay, so it is returning basically. So we have to print it out. So fmt dot println, and just call it user save dot repo. And I think, okay, sorry, it's u dot user repo dot save. Let's just see it again. Okay, so repository got called and our service method got called. So now our flow actually is going from our controller to the end of our repository. So that's how you can implement a simple application using clean code architecture. In the next video, we're gonna be building an HTTP applications. We're gonna be binding uh, with Gin probably, and we'll just create a simple application, simple HTTP application. Okay, so yeah, that's all for this video. Thank you guys. Thank you for watching.